The massive doors of Council Chamber 7 slid open with a hiss that echoed through the vast hall. Commander Jake Sullivan stepped inside and immediately felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes turning toward him. Some of those eyes were compound and multifaceted. Others glowed with bioluminescence. A few were mechanical implants that whirred softly as they focused. Jake kept his expression neutral and his stride confident as he walked across the polished floor that seemed to stretch for half a mile. Ambassador Lisa Morgan walked beside him with her head held high. She wore the formal diplomatic uniform of Earth with its blue and silver threading. On Jake's other side strode Colonel Henry Brooks. His jaw was set in that way that told Jake the man was already preparing for a fight. The three humans made their way to the circular platform, at the center of the chamber where defendants and petitioners were required to stand. Above them on elevated platforms arranged in concentric circles sat the representatives of the Galactic Council. The chamber was designed to make those at the center feel small and insignificant. It worked on most species. The Vexthari had built this place 12,000 years ago when they first established the Council. Every architectural choice was meant to remind visitors that the Council was ancient and powerful, and beyond question. Archon Kellis looked down at the humans from the highest platform. His crystalline form refracted the light in the chamber into dancing patterns across the walls. When he spoke, his voice resonated through translation devices embedded in every surface. The words came out in perfect English, but with an underlying tone that humans had learned to recognize as condescension. The human delegation has been summoned to address violations of Council, Decree 7042, Archon Kellis announced. Your species has established 17 colonies in the region designated as the Outer Reaches. This region was declared forbidden territory by Council vote in the year 4012 of the Galactic Standard Calendar. Explain your defiance of Council law. Lisa Morgan activated the speaking platform with a touch. Her voice carried through the chamber with the same technological enhancement that Archon Kellis enjoyed. The Outer Reaches were declared forbidden 8,000 years ago. In that time, no Council species has shown any interest in settling or even exploring the region. When human survey teams investigated, we found no active claims, no settlements, and no evidence that any Council species had visited those star systems in over 5,000 years. We believed abandoned territory was available for peaceful settlement. A ripple of what might have been laughter or scorn passed through the assembled Council members. Councillor Thren leaned forward from his platform. The Corvin warrior's scales glinted under the chamber lights. His species had been part of the Council for 9,000 years, and they never let younger species forget it. Belief is irrelevant, Thren said. Council law does not expire because time passes. Council law does not become void because younger species find it inconvenient. The Outer Reaches remain forbidden. Your colonies are illegal. Your presence there is illegal. Your very survey of the region was illegal. Henry Brooks shifted his weight slightly. Jake could see the colonel's hand clench into a fist and then deliberately relax. They had discussed this possibility during the journey to Council Station Zentara Prime. They knew the Council might take a hard line. What they hadn't anticipated was this level of contempt. Lisa Morgan continued as though Thren hadn't spoken. Earth requests a formal review of the decree. 8,000 years ago, the Council had different borders and different member species. The reasons for declaring the Outer Reaches forbidden are not in any public record. We believe that after so much time and with changed circumstances, a review is appropriate and reasonable. Denied, Archon Kellis said. The word fell like a hammer. The Council does not explain its decisions to species who have been members for a mere 30 years. You will withdraw your colonies within 6 standard months. You will submit all data collected in the Outer Reaches to Council archives. You will cease all independent exploration beyond the borders assigned to human space. These requirements are not negotiable. Jake watched Lisa's shoulders tense. In the 3 years he had worked with her, he had learned to read the ambassador's body language. She was approaching her limit. The question was whether she would hold her tongue or finally say what Earth's government had authorized her to say, if negotiations failed. There is one additional requirement, Archon Kellis continued. Humanity's military expansion has grown concerning to several Council members. Your fleet now numbers over 300 vessels of destroyer class or larger. This is excessive for a species of your age and territory size. You will reduce your military to no more than 100 vessels. All vessels beyond that number will be decommissioned under Council supervision. Furthermore, all human military operations beyond your home system will require council approval in advance. The chamber went silent. Jake felt his own anger rise like a tide in his chest. They wanted Earth to give up 2/3 of its fleet. They wanted every human military action to require permission from this collection of species, who clearly viewed humanity as children at best and a threat at worst. Henry Brooks took one step forward. His voice was low and dangerous when he spoke. "That is not acceptable." "It is not a request," Thren replied. "It is a requirement. You will comply or face sanctions. Economic at first. If those prove insufficient, then we will discuss other measures." Lisa Morgan closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Jake saw something in her expression that he had never seen before. It was relief mixed with determination. She had made her decision. "No," Lisa said. The word was simple and clear. Archon Kellis tilted his crystalline head. "Clarify your statement." "No," Lisa repeated. "Earth will not withdraw our colonies. We will not submit our data. We will not reduce our military. We will not seek permission for our own defensive operations. And we will not accept these requirements because as of this moment, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. Our membership is terminated effective immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. For perhaps 10 seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The concept was so foreign to the council members that they seemed unable to process what they had just heard. Then the chamber erupted into chaos. Voices in a dozen languages shouted over each other. Translation systems struggled to keep up with the sudden barrage. Counselor Thren was on his feet roaring something in Corvan. Others were calling for order. Some were laughing as though Lisa had told an absurd joke. Archon Kellis raised one crystalline appendage, and the chamber's sound-dampening systems activated. The noise cut off abruptly. His voice when he spoke was cold. "No species leaves the council. It is not done. It has never been done. You cannot simply walk away from agreements your government signed." "We can and we are," Lisa said.
The agreements Earth signed included provisions for withdrawal.
"Your legal staff can review them if you wish, but the decision is made. Humanity thanks the Council for 30 years of association. We wish you well, but we are done." Jake watched the faces and forms around the chamber. He saw shock. He saw anger. He saw what he thought might be fear on a few of the representatives from younger species. But what he saw most of all was disbelief. The Council had existed for 12,000 years. In that time, hundreds of species had joined. None had ever left by choice. "You will reconsider," Archon Kellis said. "When you understand what you are giving up, you will come back." "They always do." Lisa Morgan smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you will come to understand what you just gave up." Ambassador Morgan withdrawing from Council Station. Earth delegation departing. She turned and walked toward the massive doors. Jake and Henry followed. Behind them, the chamber erupted into noise again, but this time the sound dampeners stayed off. Jake could hear the arguments beginning already. Some council members were calling for immediate action. Others were calling for patience. A few voices suggested that humanity might have a point. As the doors closed behind them, Henry let out a long breath. "Well, that happened. Did you see their faces?" Jake asked. "They had no idea we would actually do it." Lisa was already walking quickly toward the docking area where their shuttle waited. "They're about to learn a lot of things they don't know. The question is whether they'll learn fast enough to avoid what comes next." "Think they'll actually try to force us back?" Henry asked. "I know they will," Lisa said. "The Council doesn't understand the word no. They've never had to. But they're going to learn. And when they do, the galaxy is going to change in ways they can't imagine." Jake followed the ambassador through the corridors of Council, Station Zentara Prime. Around them, aliens of 100 species stopped and stared at the human delegation. News was already spreading. The impossible had just happened. Humanity had walked away. And somewhere deep in Council chambers, powerful beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were beginning to feel something they had not felt in a very long time. They were beginning to feel afraid. The Council chamber had cleared hours ago, but Counselor Thren remained in his seat staring at the empty platform where the humans had stood. His clawed hand tapped rhythmically against the armrest while his mind worked through scenarios and possibilities. Around him, cleaning drones hummed quietly as they prepared the chamber for the next session. He barely noticed them, Archon Kellis materialized beside him without warning. The Vexthari leader's crystalline form shifted colors from blue to amber as he settled into a hovering position. You are contemplating military action. Thren didn't deny it. They cannot be allowed to simply leave. If humanity succeeds, every young species in the Council will question their membership. We will face an exodus, perhaps, Kellis said. But consider the alternative. If we use force and fail, then we demonstrate weakness. If we use force and succeed, then we demonstrate tyranny. Either outcome damages the Council's authority. Then what do you propose? Thren turned to face the ancient being. We allow them to walk away? We do nothing? I propose we remind them why they joined in the first place, Kellis replied. Economic pressure, trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation. Within 6 months, their economy will collapse. They will have no choice but to return. And when they do, we will be generous in accepting them back. We will be the merciful council that forgives the foolish children who briefly lost their way. Thren considered this. It had a certain logic. Humans were traders and merchants by nature. Their economy depended heavily on galactic commerce. Cut them off from council markets and they would feel the pain quickly. The other members will support this? I will call for a vote tomorrow, Kellis said. Sanctions always pass. They are safe. They are appropriate. They send a message without risking conflict. And they work. After Kellis departed, Thren remained in his seat for another hour. He pulled up intelligence reports on human space and studied them carefully. The data showed exactly what Kellis had said. Humanity's economy was integrated into the Council's economic structure. Their colonies depended on imported technology and resources. Their military used Council standard equipment and ammunition. Cut off those supply lines and humanity would wither within months. He submitted his recommendation to the Corvin High Command. Military forces should be positioned near human space, not as invaders but as a show of strength. Once the sanctions began to bite, the humans might try something desperate. Better to be prepared. On Earth, President Nathan Cross sat in the Situation Room 3 levels below the White House. The room was packed with advisors and military commanders and scientists. Holographic displays covered every wall showing real-time data from across human space. Colonel Henry Brooks had arrived 2 hours earlier and delivered a full report on the council meeting. They'll vote for sanctions tomorrow, Secretary of Defense Laura Bennett said. She was reading from a tablet that displayed intercepted council communications. Archon Kellis is already lobbying the member species. He expects unanimous support. Let them vote, Nathan said. Laura, what's the status of Operation Homestead? All colonies have achieved self-sufficiency as of last month, Laura replied. Food, water, air, basic manufacturing. They can survive without council imports indefinitely. They won't be comfortable, but they'll survive. Military status? Admiral Karen Stone stepped forward. She commanded Earth's defense forces and had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. All vessels have been retrofitted with the new drives. We're no longer dependent on council jump gates. Every ship can navigate independently using our own charts. Ammunition and spare parts have been stockpiled at every major base. We can operate without council supplies for 5 years minimum. Nathan nodded. Technology? Dr. Gregory Chen moved to the center of the room. The chief scientist looked tired but excited. Mr. President, I need to show you something. Computer Display Project Exodus Overview. The holographic display shifted to show a star map unlike anything the Council had ever produced. It showed not just the known jump routes, but hundreds of alternate paths that Council navigators had never discovered. Dr. Chen pointed to several, highlighted systems in the outer reaches. 3 years ago, our survey teams found ruins in the outer reaches, ancient structures from a civilization that died out millions of years ago. Inside those ruins, we found data archives. Most of it was corrupted, but what we recovered changed everything. We learned how jump drives actually work, not the simplified version the Council teaches, but the real physics behind it. He manipulated the display to zoom in on one particular system. The Council tells everyone that jump gates are necessary because space-time navigation is too complex for shipboard computers. That's a lie. Jump gates exist because they allow the Council to control all interstellar travel. Every ship that uses a Council gate pays a fee and follows Council-approved routes. It's the foundation of their economic power. But we can navigate without them now, Nathan said. Correct. Every human ship built in the last 2 years has our new drive system installed. Every older ship has been retrofitted. We can go anywhere in the galaxy without asking permission or paying fees. And Mr. President, we're not the only ones who figured this out. The ruins we found show that the ancient civilization knew. They had free navigation across the entire galaxy. Why did they go extinct? Laura asked. Dr. Chen shrugged. We don't know yet. But it wasn't because of their technology. They were more advanced than the current council in almost every way. Whatever killed them, it wasn't lack of capability. Nathan absorbed this information. So when the council imposes sanctions, we can simply go around them. Trade with non-council species. Explore new regions. We don't need them at all. That's correct, sir, Dr. Chen confirmed. In fact, I would argue that remaining in the council was holding us back. They restrict exploration. They limit technological development. They enforce conformity. Without those restrictions, humanity can advance at our natural pace. And our natural pace is much faster than most species. Admiral Stone cleared her throat. Mr. President, there's one more thing you should know. We've detected council military forces moving toward our borders. 3 fleets, approximately 500 vessels total. They're maintaining position just outside our territory, but the intent is clear. They want us to see them. They want us to feel threatened. Are we threatened? Nathan asked. Karen Stone smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. No, sir. Those council fleets are using technology that's 50 years old by their standards and maybe 200 years old by ours, after what we learned from the ruins. If they cross into our space, we can disable them without destroying a single ship. But I'd prefer not to demonstrate that capability unless absolutely necessary. Agreed. Let's keep our technological advantage secret as long as possible. Dr. Chen, continue working on the data from the ruins. Laura, make sure our colonies have everything they need. Karen, maintain defensive posture only. No provocative actions. Let the council make the first move after sanctions. And if they escalate beyond sanctions? Laura asked. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then we show them what they've lost by treating us like children. But I want to be very clear with everyone in this room. We are not seeking conflict. We're not trying to destroy the council. We simply refuse to be second-class citizens in a galaxy that belongs to all intelligent species equally. If the council can accept that, then we can coexist. If they can't, well, that's their choice to make. The meeting continued for another 2 hours as various departments reported on their readiness. When it finally ended, Nathan remained in the Situation Room alone. He pulled up the public news feeds from across council space. The story of humanity's withdrawal was spreading rapidly. Some species were calling humans arrogant. Others were calling them brave. A few were asking uncomfortable questions about whether the council really served its member species or simply controlled them. Nathan composed a message to be broadcast across all human worlds and transmitted to every embassy and diplomatic mission humanity maintained. The speech was short and simple. He explained that Earth had withdrawn from the council because the council refused to treat humanity as equals. He acknowledged that the coming months would be difficult as sanctions took effect. But he promised that humanity would endure and would thrive because they were no longer shackled by rules designed to keep them weak. The broadcast went out at midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. Within an hour it had been translated into 300 languages and was being shared across the galactic network despite council attempts to block it. Young species especially were watching and sharing and discussing. The Talari, who had joined the council only 50 years ago, issued a statement asking for clarification on their own withdrawal rights. The Minari, who had been members for 200 years, began internal debates about whether council membership was truly beneficial. Archon Kellis watched these developments from his private chambers on Council Station Zentara Prime. The vote for sanctions would pass tomorrow. He had no doubt of that. But for the first time in his very long life, he felt uncertain about the outcome. Humans were not behaving like any species the council had encountered before. They were not begging to return. They were not showing fear. Instead, they seemed almost eager for this confrontation. He pulled up humanity's file and read through it again. 30 years of membership. Repite. Chronological development. Strong economy. Powerful military for such a young species. And now this withdrawal. What were they planning? What did they know that the council didn't? The questions bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Tomorrow the sanctions would begin, and then the council would discover whether humanity would break as every other rebellious species had broken, or whether something new and dangerous had entered the galaxy. Something that could walk away from 12,000 years of tradition and not look back. Something that might inspire others to do the same. That thought kept Archon Kellis awake long into the night cycle, while his crystalline form flickered with colors that indicated deep concern. The council vote took place exactly as predicted. 200 species voted in favor of comprehensive sanctions against humanity. 0 votes against, 3 abstentions from younger species who were still processing what had happened. Archon Kellis announced the results with what he believed was appropriate gravitas and dignity. All trade with human space would cease immediately. All council vessels would avoid human territory. All technology sharing agreements were terminated. Humanity was now officially isolated from galactic civilization. Councillor Thren watched the vote with satisfaction. His military forces were already positioned along human borders. 3 full battle fleets comprising 512 vessels. The humans would see this armada and understand their position. They would realize that defiance had consequences. Within weeks, they would be begging to return to the council and accepting whatever terms were offered. The Corvan fleet commander was Admiral Vokhtar. He was a veteran of 40 years and had fought in 3 border conflicts. He considered this assignment to be simple peacekeeping. Show strength. Project power. Wait for the humans to collapse under economic pressure. He expected to be home within 3 months. His flagship, the Sovereign Will, held position at the edge of the Terran defense perimeter. Long-range sensors showed human vessels moving about their territory in normal patrol patterns. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. Just a young species going about their business, while pretending they didn't see the massive council fleet watching them. Admiral Karen Stone sat in her command center on Luna Base studying the same sensor data that Vokhtar was seeing. Beside her stood Commander Jake Sullivan, who had been promoted and reassigned to defensive operations after returning from Council Station. Together they watched the Council forces maintain their threatening posture just outside human space. "They're waiting for us to break," Jake said. "Let them wait," Karen replied. "How long until the demonstration is ready?" "Captain Ryan Foster reports the Valiant is in position." "He can execute on your command," Karen nodded slowly. The decision she was about to make would change everything. Once humanity demonstrated their true capabilities, there would be no going back. The Council would know that humans had leaped far beyond expected technological levels. They would know that the intelligence reports were wrong. They would know that humanity was not weak. "Send the order," Karen said. "Execute Operation Revelation." In the space between human territory and the Council fleet, a patch of apparently empty void suddenly contained a ship. The destroyer Valiant appeared without warning exactly 3 kilometers from Admiral Vokhtar's flagship. No jump signature, no energy buildup, no advance warning of any kind. One moment there was nothing. The next moment, a human warship sat in the middle of the Council formation. Every alarm on every Council ship screamed at once. Tactical officers shouted reports. Weapons systems locked onto the sudden intruder. Admiral Vokhtar stared at his displays in complete confusion. Ships did not simply appear. Jump technology required gates or at minimum a visible energy discharge as a vessel transitioned from jump space to normal space. What he was seeing was impossible. Captain Ryan Foster sat in the command chair of the Valiant watching his tactical display with calm satisfaction. Around him his crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment for 6 months. Every system had been tested and retested. The new stealth technology that Dr. Chen's team had developed from the ancient ruins worked perfectly. "Open a channel to all Council vessels," Ryan ordered. His communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. Attention Council forces. This is Captain Ryan Foster of the Earth Destroyer Valiant. You are currently positioned in a manner that suggests hostile intent toward human territory. We request that you withdraw to a distance of at least 50 light-years from our borders within 24 hours. This is not a threat. This is information. If you do not withdraw, we will assume you intend to violate human sovereignty, and we will respond accordingly. Please acknowledge receipt of this message." Admiral Vokhtar listened to this transmission with growing anger. A single human destroyer was giving orders to a fleet of over 500 Council vessels. The arrogance was beyond comprehension. He opened a command channel to all ships under his authority. "All vessels target the human ship. Prepare to fire on my mark. We will disable their vessel and demonstrate what happens to those who threaten the Council. Mark." 512 Council warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy weapons and kinetic projectiles converged on the Valiant from every direction. It was enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Nothing could survive that concentrated assault. The Valiant moved. It didn't accelerate in any normal sense. It simply stopped being where the weapons were aimed and started being somewhere else. The ship flickered in and out of normal space too fast for Council targeting systems to track. Every shot missed. Every beam passed through empty void where the human destroyer had been a microsecond earlier. Ryan watched his tactical display with clinical detachment. Weapons, you are authorized to disable Council vessels. Non-lethal force only. Make it educational. What happened next would be analyzed by Council military strategists for years to come, and they would never fully understand it. The Valiant began systematically disabling Council ships with surgical precision. A single shot from the human destroyer would strike a Council vessel's engine core. The reactor would automatically shut down to prevent overload. The ship would drift helpless but intact. Crew unharmed. Systems salvageable. Just completely dead in space. The Valiant moved through the Council formation like a ghost. It appeared beside one ship long enough to fire a single shot, then vanished before return fire could be launched. It disabled 3 vessels per minute. The Council fleet began to scatter in confusion, trying to avoid the ship they couldn't track or target. Collisions became a real danger as ships maneuvered wildly. Admiral Vakhtar watched his fleet fall apart around him. His own vessel shuddered as the Valiant appeared directly above his flagship and fired a precise shot into the Sovereign Will's main reactor. Backup systems engaged automatically, but main power was gone. His mighty flagship was now just an expensive piece of debris. The entire engagement lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, every single Council vessel in the formation was disabled and drifting. Not one ship destroyed. Not one crew member killed. Just 512 warships rendered completely useless by a single human destroyer that was already returning to its patrol route inside human space. On Council Station Zentara, Prime the Military Command Center received the battle data in real time. Officers stood frozen watching displays that showed their entire fleet being systematically dismantled. Councillor Thren's claws dug into his chair's armrest hard enough to leave gouges in the metal. This was not possible. This could not be happening. Archon Kellis arrived at the command center within minutes. He reviewed the recordings 3 times before he spoke. When he did, his voice was very quiet. How far ahead of us are they? The chief military analyst was a Vexithari scientist named Kelris, who had studied human technology for 20 years. He pulled up comparative data on the displays. Based on what we just witnessed, I estimate human military technology is 300 to 500 years ahead of current Council standard. The stealth capability alone suggests they've mastered dimensional phasing. The precision of their weapons indicates targeting systems we haven't even theorized yet, and the speed of their vessel implies engine technology that operates on principles we don't understand. How is this possible? Thren demanded. 30 years ago, they were barely capable of interstellar flight. Now they're more advanced than species who have been spacefaring for thousands of years? I don't know, Kelris admitted. But I have a hypothesis. The outer reaches. The region we forbade them to explore. What if there's something there? What if they found something we don't know about? Archon Kellis felt something he had not experienced in thousands of years. He felt genuine fear. Pull up the historical records. Why were the outer reaches declared forbidden? Kelris worked at his console for several minutes. The decision was made 8,300 years ago. The stated reason was dangerous stellar phenomena that made exploration too risky. But sir, there's a classified addendum. Access restricted to Archon-level clearance only. Show me. The addendum appeared on a private display visible only to Kellis. His crystalline form shifted to a deep red color that indicated extreme concern. The outer reaches were declared forbidden because our survey teams found ruins there. Ruins from a civilization far more advanced than the Council. The decision was made to seal the region to prevent younger species from accessing that technology until the Council could fully study it. And did we study it? Kellis asked, though he already knew the answer. No, sir. The research teams reported that the ruins were too dangerous, too alien, too far beyond our understanding. The recommendation was to leave them sealed and forgotten. Which we did. Until humanity ignored our restrictions and explored the region anyway, Kelly said. And they found what we were afraid to look for. They learned what we refused to learn. And now they're more advanced than we are because they were willing to take risks we weren't. In the command center, silence fell as the full implications became clear. The Council had based its authority on being the most technologically advanced civilization in the galaxy. That authority was now in question. Worse, the Council's attempt to control humanity through military intimidation had just failed spectacularly. Every species in Council space would soon see recordings of a single human ship disabling an entire fleet. The message was unmistakable. Humanity didn't need the Council. The Council might need humanity. Ambassador Lisa Morgan received a priority transmission 2 hours after the engagement ended. It was from Admiral Vokhtar speaking from his disabled flagship. His pride was clearly wounded, but his message was respectful. He formally requested that human rescue vessels assist in recovering his disabled fleet. The nearest Council repair facilities were weeks away, and his crews were running on emergency life support. Lisa smiled as she composed her response. Earth would, of course, provide humanitarian assistance. Human tugs would tow the disabled Council vessels to a safe location just outside the border. Medical supplies would be provided. Temporary life support would be installed. And once the crews were safe, the Council ships would be returned undamaged. But there would be a price. Not money, not technology, just one simple thing. The Council would acknowledge in writing that human space was sovereign territory, and that Council forces had no authority to threaten it. They would acknowledge that humanity's withdrawal was legitimate and legal. They would acknowledge that Earth was not subject to Council jurisdiction. Admiral Vokhtar had no choice. He signed the document. Within hours, it was transmitted across the galactic network. Species everywhere read it and understood. Humanity had not just defended themselves. They had forced the Council to recognize their independence. The impossible had happened. A young species had defied the ancient powers and won. The recordings of the engagement spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Every news network from Council space to the independent frontier worlds showed the same footage. A single human destroyer appearing from nowhere and systematically disabling an entire Council fleet. The images were clear and undeniable. The implications were staggering. In the Talari home system, the planetary government convened an emergency session. Prime Minister Kelva stood before the assembly and spoke words that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. We have been members of the Galactic Council for 50 years. In that time, we have followed every rule and paid every fee, and accepted every limitation they placed upon us. We believed this was necessary. We believed the Council protected us and guided us. But if humanity can thrive outside the Council, then perhaps we can as well. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. When the vote finally came, it was close but decisive. The Talari formally requested a review of their Council membership terms with the option to withdraw if those terms could not be renegotiated. 3 other species submitted similar requests within 48 hours. The Minari, the Korath, the Talvek, all younger species who had joined the Council within the last few centuries, all suddenly questioning whether membership was truly beneficial. Archon Kellis watched this cascade with growing alarm. In 12,000 years, the Council had never faced a crisis like this. Species were supposed to want Council membership. It was supposed to be an honor and a privilege. The idea that multiple species might choose to leave voluntarily was something no one had planned for. Councillor Thren called for immediate military action against humanity. His argument was simple and brutal. Humans had humiliated the Council. They had demonstrated technology that threatened Council supremacy. They had inspired other species to rebel. The only solution was to crush humanity completely as a warning to others, show overwhelming force, occupy human worlds, dismantle their military, make an example so terrible that no other species would dare to follow their path. The vote on military escalation failed. 140 species voted against. 50 voted in favor. 10 abstained. The majority of Council members recognized that attacking humanity would likely result in another humiliating defeat. Worse, it would confirm humanity's argument that the Council ruled through force rather than mutual benefit. It would drive more species toward withdrawal rather than preventing it. President Nathan Cross received intelligence reports about the internal Council debates. He sat in the Oval Office with Secretary of Defense Laura Bennett and Ambassador Lisa Morgan, who had returned to Earth after completing her mission on Council Station. Together, they reviewed the political situation developing across Council space. 4 species have requested membership reviews, Lisa said. Another dozen are having internal debates about it. The council is fracturing faster than we anticipated. Is that good or bad? Nathan asked. Both, Laura replied. It's good because it means we're not alone. It's bad because if the council completely collapses, we could face chaos across half the galaxy. Say what you will about them, but the council did maintain a certain level of order and stability. Nathan nodded. So we need to be careful. We don't want to destroy the council. We just want them to change how they operate. Exactly, Lisa agreed. Which is why I think it's time for the next phase. We need to offer an alternative. Dr. Gregory Chen joined the meeting by holographic projection from his research facility in the outer reaches. His image appeared above the conference table with excited energy. Mr. President, I have news. We've made contact with 17 species outside council space. Some of them are pre-council civilizations that refuse to join. Others are post-council species that left centuries ago and survived by staying hidden. All of them are interested in talking to us. Talking about what? Nathan asked. About forming something new. Not a council that rules from the top down, but a federation that operates through consensus. Species would maintain complete sovereignty. No forced regulations. No mandatory technology sharing. No economic control. Just mutual cooperation and voluntary alliances. Laura leaned forward. You're talking about creating a rival to the council. That could trigger the war we're trying to avoid. Not a rival, Dr. Chen corrected. An alternative. Species could choose which organization to join or choose to join both or choose neither. The key is choice. The council has never offered that. They present membership as the only option for civilized species. We'll prove that's not true. Nathan considered this carefully. If we announce this publicly, the council will see it as a direct challenge. They'll see it as a challenge no matter what we do, Lisa said. Right now, we're the only species that successfully left the council. If we stay isolated, we're just an anomaly. But if we create a functional alternative to the council model, then we become proof that their way isn't the only way. That's much more powerful and much more dangerous to their authority. How long would it take to organize something like this? Nathan asked. We've already started, Lisa admitted. I took the liberty of making preliminary contact with several of the species Dr. Chen mentioned. They're willing to meet. We're proposing a conference on New Haven Colony. Neutral territory. Open attendance. Any species that wants to participate can send representatives. Nathan looked at his advisors and saw the same determination he felt. This was the moment. This was when humanity stopped simply reacting to council actions and started shaping the future they wanted to see. Do it. Organize the conference. Invite everyone who's interested. And make sure the council knows about it. I want them to understand this isn't about destroying them. It's about giving species options. The announcement went out 3 days later. Ambassador Lisa Morgan broadcast an invitation to every known species in the galaxy. A conference would be held on New Haven Colony in 30 days. The purpose was to discuss alternatives to council governance. Any species that valued sovereignty and voluntary cooperation was welcome to attend. No fees, no prerequisites. No requirements except a willingness to talk. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, 43 species had confirmed attendance. Some were non-council species who had never been offered membership. Some were current council members who wanted to explore options. Some were species that had left the council centuries ago and survived in isolation. All of them shared one thing in common. They wanted something different from what the council offered. On council station, Zentara Prime Archon Kellis convened an emergency meeting of the full council. 200 species gathered to discuss the human conference. Councillor Thren again called for military intervention. We should blockade New Haven. We should prevent this conference from happening. Every day we delay, we look weaker. But the vote went against him again. The majority of council members recognized that attacking a diplomatic conference would be disastrous for the council's reputation. It would confirm every criticism that humans had made. It would prove that the council maintained power through force rather than respect. Instead, the council made a different decision. They would send observers to the human conference. They would listen and watch and report back, and then they would decide how to respond. Archon Kellis appointed Ambassador Telva to lead the council observation team. Telva was a Vexathari diplomat with 600 years of experience. If anyone could navigate this situation with grace, it was her. Ambassador Telva arrived at New Haven Colony 2 days before the conference began. She expected to find a primitive settlement struggling to survive without council support. Instead, she found a thriving colony with technology that matched or exceeded anything in council space. The cities were clean and efficient. The people seemed happy and confident. There was no sense of desperation or regret about leaving the council. If anything, the humans and their allies seemed energized by their independence. Lisa Morgan met Telva at the spaceport personally. The two diplomats regarded each other with professional courtesy. "Welcome to New Haven," Lisa said. "I'm glad the council decided to send observers. This conference isn't meant to be anti-council. It's meant to be pro-choice." "An interesting distinction," Telva replied, "though I wonder if the council will see it that way." "That depends on the council," Lisa said. "If they see this as a threat, then they'll respond with hostility. If they see it as an opportunity, then they might surprise us all." The conference began on schedule with representatives from 43 species gathered in a large assembly hall that humans had constructed specifically for this purpose. Unlike the council chamber with its elevated platforms and intimidating architecture, this hall was designed to be welcoming. Every species had an equal position. Every voice had equal weight. The symbolism was deliberate and powerful. President Nathan Cross delivered the opening address via holographic projection. His speech was short and focused. "We are gathered here because we believe that sapient species deserve to govern themselves. We believe that cooperation should be voluntary, not mandatory. We believe that younger species have as much right to explore and grow as older species. And we believe that the galaxy is large enough for many different approaches to civilization. This conference is not about tearing down what exists. It's about building something new alongside it. Something based on respect rather than hierarchy. Something that offers choice rather than demanding obedience." Over the next 5 days, the assembled species debated and discussed and drafted documents. Some wanted a loose alliance with minimal structure. Others wanted something more formal with shared defense agreements and economic cooperation. The debates were passionate but respectful. Slowly, a consensus emerged. The result was the Federation of Free Worlds, a voluntary association of sovereign species dedicated to mutual cooperation. Members would maintain complete control over their own territories and governments. No central authority would have power to override local decisions. But members would agree to principles of non-aggression and mutual defense. If any member was attacked, the others would provide assistance. If any member needed help, the others would offer it. The key difference from the council was simple. Everything was voluntary. Everything was based on consent. No species would be forced to do anything. By the end of the conference, 23 species had signed the founding charter. 20 more indicated they would likely join after consulting their home governments. It was a beginning. A small beginning, perhaps, but a real one. Proof that species could organize themselves without bowing to ancient powers. Ambassador Telva sent her report back to Archon Kellis with careful diplomatic language. But the core message was clear. Humanity had created something that worked. Something that appealed to species across the galaxy. Something that offered a genuine alternative to council membership. The council could no longer pretend that their way was the only way. The galaxy had changed and there was no going back. 6 months passed and the galaxy continued to shift in ways that the council could no longer control or predict. The Federation of Free Worlds grew steadily as more species joined. Some came from outside council space, bringing with them knowledge and resources that had been isolated for centuries. Others came from within the council itself, choosing to maintain dual membership in both organizations. The council reluctantly accepted this compromise because the alternative was losing those species entirely. Trade, routes that had flowed through. Council-controlled jump gates for thousands of years now had alternatives. Human navigators shared their knowledge freely with Federation members. Ships could travel anywhere in the galaxy without paying council fees or following council-approved paths. The economic impact was immediate and significant. Council revenue dropped by 30% in the first quarter. Some of the wealthier council species barely noticed. Others who depended on gate fees and trade tariffs felt the pressure acutely. Archon Kelly stood in his private chamber looking out at the stars beyond. Council Station Zentara Prime, he had lived for over 8,000 years and led the council for 3,000 of those years. In all that time, he had never felt so uncertain about the future. The old certainties were crumbling. The old assumptions no longer held. And the species he had dismissed as young and foolish had somehow changed everything. A message arrived marked urgent from the Council Intelligence Division. Kellis opened it and felt something close to despair. Human exploration teams had discovered another set of ancient ruins in a previously unexplored region. These ruins were even more extensive than those in the outer reaches. Early analysis suggested they contained intact technology and complete databases. If humans gained access to that knowledge, they would leap even further ahead of Council capabilities. But the message contained a second piece of information that bothered Kellis even more. The humans were not keeping this discovery secret. They had announced it publicly and invited Federation members to participate in the research. They were sharing what they found. They were treating knowledge as something that belonged to all species rather than something to be hoarded and controlled. Counselor Thren had been removed from his position 3 months earlier after his repeated calls for military action damaged his credibility. His replacement was Counselor Vec, who believed in a more pragmatic approach. Vec sent a private communication to Archon Kellis suggesting that perhaps the time had come to negotiate with humanity rather than oppose them. The message was carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. The Council needed to adapt or risk becoming irrelevant. Kellis composed a message to Ambassador Lisa Morgan. It took him 3 hours to find the right words. He requested a formal meeting between Council leadership and Federation leadership. He proposed neutral territory and equal standing. He acknowledged that the Council had made mistakes in dealing with humanity. The message was not an apology exactly, but it was as close as the ancient being could bring himself to offering. Lisa received the message in her office on New Haven Colony. She read it twice, then forwarded it to President Nathan Cross with her recommendation. They should accept the meeting. They should be generous in their response. They should offer the Council a path forward that allowed them to save face while accepting the new reality. The meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks later on New Haven. Archon Kellis would attend personally along with a small delegation of senior council members. President Cross would represent the Federation with Ambassador Morgan and Admiral Karen Stone. The fact that the Council leader was willing to come to human territory was itself a significant concession. It acknowledged that the Federation was not a rebellious subset of the Council, but a separate organization with equal legitimacy. Jake Sullivan received orders reassigning him from military service to diplomatic duties. He would be part of the security detail for the negotiations, but his real role would be as a military advisor who could explain human capabilities without revealing classified information. It was a delicate position, but Jake had proven he could handle diplomatic complexities during his time at Council Station. The negotiations began in a conference room designed to avoid any appearance of hierarchy. The table was round. The seating was arranged so that no one was at the head. Translation systems were provided by both human and Council technology, working in parallel to ensure accurate communication. Archon Kellis spoke first. His crystalline form reflected the carefully controlled lighting in the room. The Council acknowledges that our relationship with humanity began poorly and deteriorated from there. We treated your species as children who needed guidance rather than as equals who deserved respect. This was an error in judgment that we now recognize. Nathan Cross nodded slowly. We appreciate that acknowledgement. But acknowledgement alone doesn't solve the problems we face. The galaxy has changed. Species now have choices they didn't have before. The question is whether the Council can adapt to that reality. What would adaptation look like from your perspective? Kellis asked. Lisa Morgan leaned forward. The Council needs to transform from a governing body into a service organization. Stop requiring membership and start offering benefits that make species want to join. Stop controlling trade routes and start facilitating commerce. Stop restricting technology and start encouraging innovation. Become something that species choose rather than something they're pressured into accepting. Counselor Vec responded. That would require fundamental restructuring of Council operations. Many species depend on the current system. Changing it too quickly could cause economic disruption. Then change it slowly. Nathan suggested. We're not demanding the Council dissolve or surrender authority. We're suggesting that the Council evolve. The Federation isn't your enemy. We're your competition. And competition makes everyone better. The Council will have to work harder to demonstrate value. The Federation will have to prove our model works, and species across the galaxy will benefit from having options. The negotiations continued for 5 days. There were moments of tension when old grievances surfaced. There were moments of progress when both sides found common ground. Slowly, a framework emerged. The Council and Federation would maintain separate organizational structures, but establish formal diplomatic relations. They would cooperate on issues of mutual concern such as piracy and disease control. They would compete on issues of governance and economics. Species could choose membership in either organization or both or neither. The agreement was called the New Haven Accords. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a workable one. More importantly, it established a principle that would reshape galactic civilization. No single organization had the right to govern all intelligent species. Diversity in governance was not a threat to be eliminated, but a strength to be embraced. Archon Kellis signed the document with a sense of history. He understood that he was witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Council would continue to exist, but it would never again be the sole authority in the galaxy. Future historians would look back on this moment and recognize it as the point when the old order gave way to something new. After the signing ceremony concluded, Jake Sullivan found himself walking through the gardens of New Haven colony with Admiral Vokhtar. The Corvan commander had been released from medical supervision months earlier and had chosen to attend the negotiations as an observer. The two warriors who had faced each other across a battlefield now walked together in peace. "Your people changed everything," Vokhtar said. "Not through conquest or destruction, but through example. That is more frightening to the old powers than any weapon could be." "We didn't mean to frighten anyone," Jake replied. "We just wanted to be free to make our own choices. Freedom is always frightening to those who have lived without it." The Council maintained order through control. "You proved that order can exist through cooperation. That truth will spread further than you imagine." Jake retired from active military service 2 months later and accepted a position teaching at the Federation Naval Academy. His first class included students from 12 different species. Some were human, some were Talari, some were from species that had just joined the Federation. All of them were young and eager and full of questions about the future. On the first day, Jake stood before his students and told them the story of how humanity walked away from the Council. He explained the reasons and the risks and the results. But he emphasized one point above all others. We didn't win through superior weapons or clever tactics. We won by refusing to accept a system that treated us as inferior. We won by offering an alternative based on respect. And we won by being willing to stand, alone if necessary, but generous enough to invite others to stand with us. Dr. Gregory Chen continued his research in the ancient ruins with teams of scientists from across the Federation. They discovered that the civilization which built those ruins had collapsed not from external attack, but from internal stagnation. They had created a rigid hierarchical system that prevented innovation and discouraged new ideas. Eventually, they stagnated and declined and disappeared, leaving only their ruins as a warning to future civilizations. The lesson was clear. No matter how advanced or powerful a civilization becomes, it must remain flexible and open to change. It must allow dissent and encourage new thinking. It must treat all members as equals rather than dividing them into rulers and ruled. The ancient civilization had failed to learn that lesson. The Council had nearly failed as well. But the galaxy was being given another chance. On Earth, President Nathan Cross addressed a joint session of the United Nations. His speech was broadcast across human space and beyond. He spoke about the journey humanity had taken from Council membership to independence to Federation leadership. He acknowledged the risks they had taken and the sacrifices required. But he emphasized that it had all been worthwhile because humanity had proven something important. Young species did not need permission from elder species to shape their own destiny. They just needed courage to walk their own path. Archon Kellis watched that speech from his chambers on Council Station. The human leader's words stung, but they also rang true. The Council had spent thousands of years believing they knew what was best for everyone. They had created systems to enforce that belief, and they had never questioned whether those systems served the galaxy or just served themselves. Now the Council faced a choice. They could continue clinging to old ways and watch as more species left to join the Federation. Or they could embrace change and transform themselves into something better. It would be difficult and painful, and many Council members would resist. But the alternative was slow irrelevance and eventual extinction. Kellis made his decision. He would spend the remainder of his time as Archon pushing for Council reform. He would face opposition and criticism and possibly removal from office. But it was necessary. The humans had shown them the truth, even if it was a truth the Council did not want to see. The galaxy belonged to all intelligent species equally. No one had the right to rule over others without consent, and any system built on hierarchy rather than cooperation was ultimately doomed to fail. The galaxy continued to turn, and civilizations continued to rise and fall. But something had fundamentally changed. The old certainty that ancient species should guide younger ones was gone. In its place was a new understanding. Every species brought unique perspectives and capabilities. Every species deserved respect and autonomy. And the future belonged not to those who enforced obedience, but to those who inspired cooperation. Humanity had walked away from the Council, and in doing so had shown the galaxy a better path forward. The horror the Council felt was not from human weapons or defiance. It was from the realization that their entire worldview had been built on foundations of sand, and those foundations were finally crumbling away.